I struggled, even though I always put in a good face and moving forward in life. But I realized that I was not able to do it anymore, so my spirit came to save me. So here we are a year after. I decided to launch a show that will share with people the experience I've been through, and so they could also be able to learn about it, and also maybe they could be able to get out of their own personal trauma and be depressed less, non-anxiety, and be able to grow and bloom and live life like humans are supposed to. I'll let William introduce himself a little bit to you guys, and then we'll take it from there.
My name is William Michael Forbes, and I'm a spiritual medium, a channel, and an intuitive life coach. And
so what can you tell us about the Great Awakening right now? There's great things happening all over the world to amazing human beings. Every day I'm meeting someone new who's obviously experiencing the same thing.
About a year and a half ago, my wife's mother passed away. And about a week after that, we found ourselves, my wife and I, driving through the mountains in Newfoundland and in Grossmorton. And as we're driving through the mountains, this energy comes to me and says, I want to speak to you. I am the mother. And I turned to Norma and I said, it's somebody wants to speak to you. They're saying they're the mother. They want me to pull over, so I pulled the car over. And it was the very first time that an actual non-physical being actually spoke directly to me that I was aware and consciously aware of. There were times prior to that it had happened, but I wasn't conscious of that fact. So that launched this whole 45-minute conversation between her mother speaking through me about information that was only Norma and her would know, and Norma recording this whole session. And from that point on, I've had other beings come to me, Buddha, Jesus, Lao Tzu, Jamal, Siku, many beings from different planes of consciousness. What I've learned since that event is that we have these physical forms, but they are only one facet of our conscious, intentional ability to express ourselves. It doesn't define who we are unless we allow it to. But it's the mechanism that we express through. Coming to that awareness has let me open up to being able to actually talk to these beings that have vastly more knowledge, experience, and wisdom than I could individually hope to have, but that is available to every single human being on the planet. And since that, we started doing courses and classes to actually teach people how they themselves can actually move their awareness out of being identified with just being a body and a mind, and being aware that there's an intelligence and a consciousness that you can access that is plugged into everyone and everything at all points of time and space. And we teach an actual process as a result of that event. And it's pretty amazing to realize that there's dimensions of consciousness beings that you can open your awareness to. And they'll answer a question. They'll give you guidance. They'll provide you with intuition and insights into conditions and circumstances that you, on your own, might not be able to understand. But if you can step outside of that place that you think you are, you'll start to know more about who you truly are, rather than the self that you've been taught to think you are, if that makes any sense to anybody. So that's been a real journey for the last year and a half of actually, like you, going through this massive growth of realizing, wow, there's this whole reality that most of us aren't even aware of. And we get to that place where you start to realize, well, it's there. It's like right now you're not aware of your left big toe until I mentioned it. So you're aware of your left big toe. Your awareness is there, now you're aware of your left big toe. Well, these dimensions are like that. The minute you become aware of them, all of a sudden they're there.
Yeah. I was actually listening to an author where he said, it's just like the fairies. When you stop believing in the fairies, they no longer exist. They're no longer associating with you. So think of the spiritual angels and other stuff as like they want us to believe in them, and they want us to ask them for questions and so forth for them to associate with us. Yeah. But if we don't believe in them, they are not going to interfere or come to our life.
That's correct, but there are many beings around all of us waiting for us to resonate with them, much the same way as you can pick up a cell phone and call somebody in another country. You could tap into the vibration, the frequency of Jesus or Buddha or Lao Tzu or Zarathustra and actually have a communication with them and learn from them, acquire information and knowledge from them. Change your life, revolutionize how you're being. It's available to all of us.
What would you recommend as to like some of the things people should ask if they're seeking to also be awakened as well?
Well, it's, you can ask for a parking spot if you want a parking spot, and they'll guide you to a parking spot. But you can ask for real, what do I need to do with my life? What's the next step for me? Should I take that job? Should I make that phone call? When we are stuck in the confines of what we think reality is, we are limited to that which we think reality is. And when you open up to saying, hey, Master Jesus, could you just tell me, what do I need to be or do at this moment? And he might just say, breathe. He might say, get up and go for a walk. He might say, smile more often. It depends on what you're open to receiving. But the process of actually doing that is just letting your mind become quiet, moving your awareness into the present moment, and allowing yourself to just be right where you are at this moment and open to what it is you're asking for, whether it's to talk to somebody who's left the body that still exists, is trying to communicate to you, but you don't have the awareness of there. You can ask, but developing that awareness is the first thing.
Yeah, so when you say ask, how do you go about asking someone who's technically not there, and how would you feel it? Like, let's say one of the audience is able to want to do that, right? So they want to know, how can I ask, and how would I be able to know if the person responds? Okay,
there's two ways. First of all, our body in and of itself is an electrical instrument. It generates an electrical field around it. Just like the wires in these lights here generate an electrical frequency around the wiring, and we can measure that. Just so they can measure the magnetic field around the body. And it's that magnetic field, which is non-physical energy, that you can tune into. You can literally become aware of that field around the body. You could take your hands, for example, and just bring your hands slightly closer together and feel the way that energy works. When you become aware of that field, you start to move your perception outside of what you know, which is your physical body. Once that shift in perception begins to happen, all of a sudden you start to tune into the field. And it's at that place of non-physical perception that you could begin to then communicate with or sense the presence of specific beings that you would want to communicate with. So the first thing I would have a person do is relax, breathe, become aware of relaxing the body, letting go, and become aware of the vibrations, the feelings around the body, and then call in an individual. Maybe you might want to call in your brother-in-law who died in the car accident, or you might want to call your mother who left 22 years ago and you still miss her and you would like to know how she's doing. And the moment you identify or connect in thought, because thought is non-physical too, in thought to that awareness will interact with your field. And if you've attuned yourself enough to it, you can actually feel the field respond. For example, whenever I've had Master Jesus come to me, I often get this intense energy of heat comes down through my body. I literally start sweating. And there's beings like Metatron, who's a highly mathematical individual, who will actually feel like he's pushing me from behind. It depends on who you're communicating with. They'll connect to you in the way that you're open to it. So to the level of your sensitivity determines who's going to be able to come through and how you're going to experience it. It's different for different people. And you can actually feel your heart respond to yes and no questions, which we teach in our courses. You can actually go in and, is this really my mother communicating to me right now? And you can feel the heart viscerally respond. It will tighten or expand depending on what you've asked and how they respond. If it's a yes for me, that energy opens up. If it's no, it tends to close down. So in the beginning, that's what I learned to do. Is I learned to say, is this Master Jesus? No. Is this Archangel Michael? Yes and no. Why yes and no? And so on. And you begin to find out, well, there's not just Archangel Michael here, there's Buddha here too. And you learn to become aware of the changes in the feeling state of your body. Your heart will tell you. As a man thinketh in his heart, right? But that's where you begin to find the truth in knowing what is true, yes or no. And that's where all communication begins, right? Really simple, really easy.
Right. So tell us a little bit about your training class that you provide your students and anyone who might want to take.
Well, it's a 9-week program spread out over a couple of months, and we basically take people in who want to expand their consciousness, increase their awareness, communicate with non-physical beings, move into other dimensions of consciousness, create spiritual experiences, and we start off by just introducing you to the concept of proper food, proper water, establishing a vibrational consciousness that resonates with these beings. Because I had Kuan Yin once come to speak to me, and she said, I cannot speak through you because your body's too gross. And I said, what do you mean my body's too gross? And she said, you are not keeping it pure enough. And so I went on this 24-hour of drinking nothing but lemon water fast. And then the next day she did a presentation on my YouTube channel. But it's a process of getting the body in alignment with the frequencies of the consciousness you want to tune into, much the same way as a cell phone tunes into a specific wavelength, or a radio station tunes in certain channels. Getting yourself to that awareness where you get your body aligned, then you begin to get your mind aligned through meditation. So we teach meditation, proper nutrition, meditation, proper grounding, because it's important to know how to ground your energy, because we're connected, this body's connected to the earth. And when you go out and you touch a tree or you touch earth, so there's a whole process that we actually go through, different things to get the person aligned physically, mentally, and emotionally, so that they're open enough to be aware of those things. It's like you got to retune the system to be aware of that which you're tuning into, much the same way as you're in a restaurant and you're listening to a song that's a favorite song of yours. Your body will react to it if it's in tune with it. You find your body dancing to that song and moving to that song. So you want to get yourself in tune with the qualities of the consciousness that you want to begin to interact with.
Now, because we live in a very hostile society where you're bombarded with a lot of different, problem here and there, how do you manage that as like on a day-to-day basis? We're talking about keeping your vibration high, frequency balance, eating nutrition. How can a person be able to do all of that in such a
They have to keep doing situation? It's a process, and it can be really difficult for some people. We have people who have come to the courses that are long-term smokers, heavy drinkers, eat very poorly, lots of processed foods, and yet there's a part of them that's saying, I need a change, but they don't know how to do that. We walk them through steps, and it's really hard for some of them. But the ones that start moving in that direction begin to experience changes. Then when you incorporate meditation to that, where you actually get a person to sit and make their body and mind quiet, because most people have this thing going all the time. And the minute a person can turn that off and just hear silence inside their own mind, there is something magical that becomes available to your awareness, not to who you think you are, to your awareness. And when that happens, that supports the individual in their desire, because when you experience a state that makes you feel absolutely amazing, and you say, well, that state happened because I did stop smoking as much that week, and I did stop drinking half as much that week, and now I'm experiencing this. So maybe your brain makes a connection to, if I do this, this might be the result. And then it encourages them. Once you change a person's state, it changes exactly what they can or can't do. We have a philosophy, don't eat things with faces, is a really good way to look at it. Don't eat things with faces.
That's a lot of things with faces. That's like everything meat-wise, right?
But if you were to go on a strictly live food diet for a week, your body would feel a significant change. Even if you did 2 liters of freshly squeezed, freshly juiced greens in the morning, if you did that every morning for a week, you'll notice a shift in your physical body state. And you'll also start to notice a level of clarity in your mind. But until you have that experience, these are just words. And in the course, we try to walk people through doing the experience so they get the experience, which then teaches them what's true or what's false. Because that's what has to happen. Sometimes you have to fight your way through it. Okay. Some people have to literally fight and say, my body's so used to eating that, it's so used to tasting that. You literally have to fight with it and say, no, you're not going to do that anymore. And I used to talk to my body like that. I said, no, I know how much you want that chocolate bar, and it tasted so good, and it made you feel a certain way, but we don't need that anymore. We're going to give you a fresh tablespoon of honey or something that would be beneficial for it. And eventually the body learns from what you're teaching it to go in a new direction. You have to literally reprogram this mechanism to function in a fashion that supports what you really want your experience to be.
Right. Now I want to get into something more exciting. I want to talk about the cosmic energy alignments and manifestation, which is a lot of people could relate to this. Every day we set goals, but we don't know how to reach there. Can you tell me a little bit more how human could be able to fast forward this step forward and make it even faster, especially during this time of the year?
Absolutely. Our emotions are what drive us.
Yep.
What most people don't know is they can actually decide what they want to feel. Most people don't know they can actually decide, I don't want to be focused on my pain and anger. I can actually stop and focus on what would I feel like if I were in a state of joy right now? What my body be doing if I were in a state of joy? And the minute you get a person to do that, the minute they focus their attention that way, the system goes through an immediate biological and neurological chemical change instantaneously. Like right now, if we all start going, Yahoo! And getting really excited, there's an immediate change. And once the person has the ability to initiate that change intentionally on an emotional level, they'll move in a new direction. Because the body's hardwired to love pleasure and avoid pain. And if you suddenly tell it, wow, it's going to be really exciting to eat live food, and you really give it that energy, it starts to get excited about eating live food.
Okay, that's wonderful. Now, this was documented a long time ago in other books like the Mayan calendars and so forth. Your DNA is being decoded, so
Yep.
those informations are coming to you.
Our DNA is being influenced by every thought we think and every emotion we connect to. And nobody can escape that process, but you can become conscious of it and direct it. I know that if I sit with my head down and my hands, I'm going, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I'm creating a neurological and biological chemistry that can affect my body. And once a person knows they can actually change that biological process, they take over their chemistry. Once they take over their chemistry, they can control their mind. Once they can control their mind, they can control their life. Because our energy creates, our emotion creates the conditions. Our feelings manufacture the forms of our experience. And that's kind of sums up our emotional energy manifests the physical conditions in which we find ourselves at any point in time and space. The minute we can alter our emotional state, we can actually alter the emotional conditions and circumstance that we are surrounded with at any moment. I had an experience with that I'd like to share. There's a Starbucks out front of the building here. And one of my guides came and he said, we're going to teach you to understand how to stay in a state of love. You have to learn to stay in a state of love. And I said, well, that's going to be interesting. So I went down to Starbucks, and I'm sitting out there and having my chai tea, and I'm just relaxing. And all of a sudden, this man comes screaming, running onto the deck, I hate Americans, I hate Americans. And he picks up this chair, and he raises it up to throw it at me, right? And I was in this state, I'm in my bliss, and I look at him from this place of bliss, right? And he looks at me really strange, and I'm just looking at him with this bliss in my being. And all of a sudden, he shakes his head, and he throws the chair down and runs away. What happened there? What happened? This is a being that was obviously enraged, had a chair in his hand, and I'm in a state of no attachment to what he's doing. I'm just in a state of what I call love. And that circumstance and situation changed instantaneously. And I've had many, many, many examples of that in my life where those things happen. Now I'm conscious of the process. And when you become conscious of the process, you can direct changes in your life that you weren't able to before. Once you know that your emotion is generating the material experiences you have, once you know that, then the choice over your emotions becomes the crucial step in being able to enable yourself into the ascension process of your own being, to recognizing you are the director of your experience and not subjective to it. Life happens for you, not to you.
Okay. And also talking about dealing with your anger or other people's problem, because you can't control other people, but you can control your behavior, right? Or your feelings. How can one snap out of another angry person just raging at them? How can you do that?
That's a really good question. Again, if you understand how the electromagnetic spectrum works, how energy works, this glass of water, for example, is liquid water right now. Yeah. I can take this liquid water and I can put it in a freezer, and the vibration that we call cold in that freezer will slow the molecules down and turn this liquid into a solid. It alters its state. The vibration of that cold alters the state of the water. Well, I can take the water that's now ice out of the fridge, and I can put it out in the room, and the room temperature will bring it to water again. And then I can take that water, pour it in a pot, turn the heat on, raise the vibration of the water. Now the water, which was solid, a liquid, vaporizes. It changes its state. So the emotional energy that we can engage in and the intensity with which we can engage that emotion will alter people around us. Not trying to alter them, it spontaneously does that. The energy that you radiate affects other people. Right now in this room, all these biological fields, some of our fields go out 3 feet, some people can radiate their energy out 16 feet. But when fields overlap, there's an exchange of information. And that exchange of information, whether it's conscious or not conscious, you can change a person's state just by being who you are. You don't have to do anything to anybody.
So you change it through the way you feel.
You change it by being
in love state,
in that state of love or grace or joy.
or grace or joy.
You know, if somebody came running in this room screaming, "I just won $1 million! I just won $1 million!" Everybody would have a certain reaction. That's that energy, right? And it's the same thing. When you can go inside yourself, and you can do it silently. And one of the exercises we give students in our courses is we say, go out to your favorite coffee shop or restaurant, find a quiet corner and sit down and then take an assessment of the way that energy in that space operates. What do you see? How the people's moods are at the moment? And then take a moment, take a few deep breaths and move your awareness into a state of ecstatic excitement, like you're totally excited inside yourself, just like you're jumping up and down excited inside your mind. And in about 30 to 60 seconds, watch what starts to happen on you. You'll start to see people start smiling, laughing, giggling, right? It's why a person can walk into a room and light a room up, is because they're able to direct the field. And they might not even be conscious they're doing that. The energy just does that. So yeah, you can actually get to the place where you can deliberately affect conditions. And that's a really simple exercise anybody can go and do. And
that's amazing. One last question, then I'll let the audience ask more questions if they have. What is our soul purpose? What is the journey? I know each individual have different purpose, of course. I know they said we have to have a soul purpose, know our soul journey in order for us to be able to, I guess, complete the journey, right? Now, if you don't know your soul purpose, how can you complete your journey?
This is a really good question, and I know everybody's looking for that answer. What do I do with my life? Yeah. And ultimately, comes the purpose of life is to obtain maximum pleasure without hurting yourself or anybody else. So discover the things that give you an experience of joy, that when you do them, you feel more joy, and do more of that, and then do more of that, and your field will begin to alter your conditions. What most people have difficulty with is staying with that. So, you know, they get into a state, okay, I'm in a state of joy right now, and then somebody screams at them, and they go, oh, that, and they go back out of their state of joy. Yeah. But once you can maintain it long enough, you'll start to see changes around you. Opportunities will appear. So it's a free will process. You can choose whatever gives you joy, is what I would suggest, and that's unique and distinct to every individual. Yeah. You know, some person might get joy helping the elderly. Another person might get joy playing music. Another person might get joy just walking through the forest. Yeah. But the more you get aligned to that energy, the more your environmental conditions begin to reflect what you're most dominantly and emotionally attached to.
Okay, so thank you so much. That's all my questions for now, guys. You could ask him any question you have. Please go ahead.
So my question is, how does the law of karma fits into this energy? And could you also please explain something more on your experience about reincarnation and this energy? So as you told that it's a path of journey and we move from time to time as matter is getting transformed. So how does this law of karma also fit in?
That's a really good question. And if you understand, it's also called the law of cause and effect. And for me, if I'm in a state right now, if I'm angry and frustrated, and my wife and I were walking down the street, we had an example of that. Karma is not something that it's something we can certainly carry over. We can acquire it genetically from our parents, our grandparents, or great-parents, they've now figured up to 14 generations of acquired thought and emotion is what can be stored in our genetic system. So from my perspective, karma is basically the holding onto of certain emotional, mental preconditions or ideas that create specific effects. And it can happen instantly, or it can happen in another lifetime. I might have abused children, and I come back in this lifetime, I get abused as a child. The emotional quality of the experience determines the outcome of my material realm. Can we control that? Absolutely. The minute you can control your emotional state, you become the master of your karma. If you can stay in a state of love and grace, you'll start to experience more love and grace. If you are living in a state of fear and uncertainty, then you'll experience the karma of fear and uncertainty. And so karma is really nothing more nor less than the dominant emotional state we choose to stay in that keeps reoccurring as our experience.
Do you think there is an invisible hand which is actually balancing cause and effect, and do you think there is a super soul or God or something?
Yeah, I call that your awareness. You can choose to be aware of your suffering, or you can choose to be aware of your happiness. And whichever you put your awareness on, you get. If I wake up in the morning and say, this is a brand new day, and I stub my toes, I'm going out the door and I go, oh shit, I lost my exciting day. I've just shifted the emotional state. And once you enter into a conscious process where you're choosing the state you're going to be in, you start to direct or create your karma, or you shed your karma, if you like, right? The Eastern mystics have often spoke of that process. You can go on for lifetimes repeating the same thing, but once you know, and they all talk about meditation as being the means for breaking that pattern. Once you know you are not the thoughts, you are the thinker. You are not the feelings, you are the feeler. Once you are really aware of that process, you now become the creator of your experiences, not subjective to them. You get to become the cause and effect of your own self. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I just want to ask one more. Do I believe that there's other facets that can influence me? If I'm open to that frequency, if I'm open to somebody upsetting me, then I can get affected by that. But I have the choice. Like with that man, I had the choice. I could have gone into, right? Or don't you dare. I could have done a whole range of things. But that deliberate choice to align yourself to an emotional state that sustains and supports what you want your experience to be is really the goal of mastery.